If you understand what their motivations are and actually where the potential for growth is and the audiences we need to reach, that extra data and that ability to manipulate that data is allowing us to build products and solutions that can reach those growth audiences to help our clients grow.
This is Velocitize Talks. I'm Eric Jones. I'm here with Liam Brennan, who's the Global Director of Innovation Programs at MediaCom. Liam, it's great to have you.
Great to meet you.
Tell us a little bit about MediaCom and what's helped you be so successful and actually win some amazing, global pitches recently.
It's been a big year for us. Mars, a client I'm working with at the moment, a recent announcement, which is fantastic. I think what it all comes back to, apart from fantastic talent, is really understanding our clients' businesses and actually what's going to help them grow. And within our company, we have many different specialists working on many different accounts, acting in very different ways, but always driven by that need to grow our clients' businesses and understand what really makes them tick.
Along those lines, you've probably heard the quote, data is the new oil. How is that helping you sort of generate that growth for your clients by targeting potential customers more effectively?
I think data has been at the heart of a lot of the different pitches we've been running. The conversation seems to have shifted a lot from being all about targeted impressions and rather targeted identities. And data is an very important part of that, not in terms of the volume, but rather the variety of data out there that allows you to understand a little bit more about consumers. And if you understand what their motivations are and actually where the potential for growth is and the audiences we need to reach, that extra data and that ability to manipulate that data is allowing us to build products and solutions that can reach those growth audiences to help our clients grow.
So tell us a little bit about how you might be doing that, kind of creating these unified customer journeys, on behalf of clients like Mars.
Yeah, I mean, it all comes really back to understanding the consumer. And are they going on a journey? Is it an impulse moment, for example? What data is useful for building the target you're trying to reach and the moment you're trying to reach them in? You'll find products like cars that are obviously a very long purchase journey from, getting brand salience through to research to actually pushing to purchase, whereas soft drinks and candy bars are very much acting in the moment. So it's about identifying the moment and the opportunity to reach them with the right message.
You're doing something, I would say, very innovative with your Mars LaunchPad program. Tell us a little bit about that program and how it's already, led to some award-winning success.
Mars as a business, of course, is massive, whether from confectionery to food to pet care. But like any large CPG business right now, there are challenger brands coming up that can move a little bit faster than them, be a little bit more nimble. But we sense there's an opportunity to either reach new consumers or find new ways to help those consumers transact. LaunchPad was built as a way of enabling Mars to be a bit more experimental in how they operate. So TV is still very important to them, print's still very important to them out of home, but there are new technologies that are emerging that allow us to either reach these consumers in those right moments to drive to purchase or help them navigate the change when it comes to the actual purchase itself. So it is very much a structured innovation program. I think that's one thing that we try and do really differently at MediaCom is not just come in with a Rolodex of startups to work with, but actually come back with a process and a test and learn agenda and KPIs to measure against that allow the businesses that we work with to understand not just who they should be working with in the future, but also how they should be working with them.
For a large established brand like a Mars, if you were to counsel them on how much they should be sort of experimenting and testing and learning on a continuous basis, what would you say to them?
We always try and hold back a little bit of budget, but rather look at what's coming in the next 12 months rather than looking too far ahead. I think a longer conversation is one more for an acceleration unit or something internally at the company. What we're looking for is what's around the corner, and we try and pull out the problems that we believe or the opportunities that we believe will have the biggest business impact versus the investment.
Yeah, you talked about this sort of proliferation of all these new, technologies, and the best way to, learn about them is actually to start using them.
Yeah.
So along those lines, voice, it's sort of good old-fashioned voice, but suddenly with the advent of all these amazing, digital voice assistants, it's exploding. How are you counseling brands, in terms of how do they need to rethink, the sort of customer digital interaction given the rise of these tools?
Yeah, a lot of the work that we do is actually getting our clients to take a bit of a step back at first about technology. I think voice at the moment is very much on the hype charts,
right.
And the immediate reaction to that is to make a skill, is what I found. And we actually have made skills, and they've been a really nice way of exploring the voice space. So much of voice is utility right now. It may have a greater effect on e-commerce in the future, certainly in terms of brands that are more functional. Where people don't ask for a brand of toilet paper and just ask for toilet paper, let's say. Right. But certainly getting them to take a step back and thinking of all the different avenues that make a difference in that voice space and saying, this is where you should focus first and start there. This is what will make the biggest impact now, and that's part of the roadmap we build around voice.
You bring up a good point about, sort of the lack of brand in a voice context, right? Sort of, I want toilet paper, and you're not necessarily, picking out the specific brand. How do brands brand themselves on a voice shelf, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, our brands are still incredibly important. I think if you look at something like Coca-Cola, there's always this threat of disruption from an Amazon-owned brand pushing that first. But Coca-Cola's got such great brand salience. You're not going to start asking for generic cola or take a generic cola. You'll want Coca-Cola because it's been around for 100 years and it's great tasting. I think branding has become more important than ever, actually, in the age of algorithms. I think that's one of the biggest threats to brands right now is the algorithm, but it's how you tackle it. Do you fight it with paid media? Do you try and disrupt it by optimizing your pages? Or you just spend more time building your brand up on large reaching channels like TV? Because ultimately, if people remember your brand and it is still important in that selection of product, they will ask for your brand.
You've recently talked about how, retailers often sort of, quote, lose the plot, in digital media. I wondered if you could talk a little bit about what you meant.
I've watched a lot of brands that typically deal more with the grocery space start to panic about Amazon more recently. E-commerce is certainly not a new thing. It's been around for, 20 years. But there seems to be a rethink of principles having to change because of e-commerce entering the fray. And actually, when you go back and think about how brands work with retailers about making sure their products are on the shelves in the right line of sight, and they run media at the right times with the right weightings to make sure people are aware of their products being available, those principles still apply in e-commerce. I always say to brands when we're talking about e-commerce, come back and think about what makes your physical commerce experience good and what works well, but then think about the new opportunities that you can exploit. Can you be better at converting after the first exposure? Can you start to take more of a DR mentality? But just make sure that your brands are present in people's minds first, and that your brands are present in the right spaces in the e-commerce shelf, so to speak.
I've sort of seen more and more startups actually kind of launch on Amazon. How should they think about actually launching on Amazon? Going right to the sort of belly of the beast, so to speak? I
think when it comes to Amazon, the opportunity to sell on Amazon at the moment is nowhere as big as a Carrefour or a Tesco or a Walmart. They just don't have the scale yet for most products. However, most larger brands haven't got their Amazon house in order yet. And when you look at these smaller startup brands, they realize that. And like the brands that moved first into the digital space back in the day by hijacking the search opportunities or by laying out strong visuals, by ensuring they have really high customer reviews, that also means a slight change in tactics and actually how they market. So things like influencers become very important. So I think for those smaller brands, my advice to them is always look at the big guys, look where they're failing, and attack them in those places.
Because of your position as head of innovation programming, you get to probably examine more technologies than almost anybody else in the agency world. What has you most excited from a technology perspective kind of coming down the pike?
I'm particularly interested, back to the e-commerce point actually, I think there's a lot of great work being done in the e-commerce space. And when you think about all the journeys you go down, particularly for things like groceries, there's quite a number of steps involved in the process still. And it's not, buying online for groceries is not a great experience. But those startups that are coming out now and looking at how they can collapse that experience without ruining the digital experience, I think there's a lot for brands to learn from, but also there's a lot of opportunity in market. And it's those, again, back to those smaller brands again, they are looking at that technology as a way of maximizing the value from the paid media they're running.
We all talk about omni-channel, right? And sort of, that's the holy grail, sort of marrying this, physical experience with the digital experience. Is there any brand that comes to mind that you think is absolutely nailing this?
I think the click and collect work that's being done by some of the grocers here in the UK is quite interesting, like Tesco. I know that's not a brand working with a retailer as such, but like John Lewis is another one that in the UK, one of the few retailers here that wasn't really impacted by the launch of Amazon. They maintained this year they had a bad year, but previously they've maintained their revenue fairly flat. And what they did is they just gave people the opportunity to buy the way they want to buy. And so if you're browsing in store and you don't want to take the product with you because it's too bulky, you can just tap into a computer in the store and then get it shipped to your office or shipped to your home. If you're at home and you want to buy online but you don't want to wait for delivery, you can go pick it up in the store. And it's just really simple things like that it's just a nice consumer experience, and ultimately they're just letting people shop how they want to shop. It's really simple.
How about going back to the data point, and every consumer wants a more personalized experience, wants value delivered in exchange for giving up that data. How do you counsel brands on that point versus, going a little bit too far and being creepy?
We had a campaign we ran a few years ago. I'll use an example for Coca-Cola in the UK with Channel 4. Channel 4 is a sort of a medium-sized broadcast here after the BBC, one of the bigger commercial ones. And they were one of the better streaming TV networks at the time. And as part of the Share a Coke campaign, what we did is we used the login data from people's Channel 4 logins to serve someone's name on the pre-roll. So when the Coke bottle appears, Share a Coke with Liam, based on the data that was being held within Channel 4. And if you talk about that example to people, and they go, well, that's kind of creepy, right? You didn't say how you knew their name. But it didn't feel that creepy because it was fun and it was enjoyable.
Right,
it's exciting, right? But if I was to do that in banner ads and follow me around the internet and say, hey, Liam, do you want to buy some shoes? I'd find that very creepy.
That's too far, yeah.
It's a little bit too far. So I think it's a balance between being transparent about where the data came from, because again, that was on the Channel 4 thing. There's a big button saying, where do we get your data from? Here's where it's from. But also being fun and non-invasive.
Yeah, I think it's also a good point that you raised, though, that sort of the first time it's spontaneous, it's kind of fun, but when you start to badger somebody with it, that's where it starts to get annoying, creepy, that kind of thing.
I think we talk about digital marketing at the moment, the problems we've got with digital marketing. A lot of that stems from that focus on the immediate kind of result that comes from click-through rates and CPAs. And that's all the DR type mentality that's sort of emerged in the last 10 years is really ruining some of the strong branding work that's being done upstream. And my hope for digital marketing in the future is actually we take a bit of a step back and realize there's an amazing opportunity here to achieve the same amount of reach as we can with TV, be more personalized, be more relevant, but not spam people.
I personally find myself getting, highly irritated from sites. You try to click off, and it's like, are you sure you really want to leave?
Yeah.
It's like, but I'm sure it performs actually fairly well.
My gripe is the one that pops up on the screen when you come in and says, like, why don't you enter your details and join our mailing list? I'm like, no, I've just come here. It's like, leave me alone. I want to browse your website, thanks.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Is there a book you'd like to recommend for our viewers?
So the book I'm really into at the moment is called Be More Pirate by a guy called Sam Aland, and I hope I've pronounced that correctly. It's founded on the quote, I'd rather be a pirate than join the Navy, which is a Steve Jobs quote. And it's full of really practical advice on how to be a disruptor within the workplace and within the world around you. There's really nice practical examples peppered all the way through the book in regards to pirates as well as in regards to business. But it's actually genuinely fun to read. And I've bought a copy for all my clients after reading it, and I've read it a couple of times now. So fantastic book, and I highly recommend it to the audience.
That's awesome. How are you helping your clients to be more pirate?
I think it's giving them confidence, actually. The biggest challenge that the clients I work with often have is bravery within the business. When you are trying to be more agile and try and drive change, there's lots of middle management layer at pretty much every corporate that is designed to stop that change being driven and keep the status quo. And for that one person to put their hand up and say, I think there's a better way of doing this, takes a lot of bravery and putting their head on the line.
That's awesome. Thanks so much for being here today, Liam. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
That was Liam Brennan, the Global Director of Innovation Program at MediaCom.